Welcome to the Perception Channel, a place where we have casual conversations with design heroes, inspirational leaders, collaborators, and friends. I'm here today with Paolo Malabuyo, Director of Design at Netflix, as well as a Carnegie Mellon professor. How you doing, Paolo? Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me today. Just to get started, tell me a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, and some of your background.
Sure. I'm originally from the Philippines. Immigrated to the U.S., 1985. Before coming to the U.S., spent some time in Indonesia, Bangladesh, so did the whole Southeast Asia thing. Came to the U.S., settled outside of Philadelphia, then went to Carnegie Mellon for college, where you and I got to meet.
That's right.
And then came out to Silicon Valley in 1995 after graduating. I studied art and design at Carnegie Mellon. Came out to work for IBM when I first got here, worked for Oracle, then got called up to Microsoft. Lived in the Seattle area 1998 till about 2011. Did a startup, worked at Microsoft, came down here, worked for Zynga, then went to Mercedes-Benz, and then about over a year and a half ago came and joined Netflix.
Wow. So what do you think set you on this career path to begin with?
I don't want to move back in with my parents.
Uh-huh.
That's really what it came down to,
Yeah.
If you want to be really practical about it. I mean, back when we were in school, people weren't telling people to go study art or design.
Yeah.
Right? They were
You studied painting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I got a minor in design, but I went and did painting and electronic and time-based media. You know, none of these things were paths to what people might consider conventional success. And I knew that. You know, I'm a first-generation immigrant, and one of the things I really wanted to do was not have to regret or have my parents regret letting me go study the thing that I thought was going to be really, really good for me. And so, you know, I'm really not kidding when I'm saying what drove me to this was some kind of, how can I turn what I'm trying to do, trying to pursue in school, into something that's practical. I looked for everything, but somehow the thing that I was able to pursue and actually happened was to come to Silicon Valley and work in the technology industry. IBM is not necessarily one of those places that people think of as, you know, cutting edge, and clearly mid-90s it wasn't that. But that gave me the entry into the high-tech industry that honestly, when we were in school, I never thought about it.
Yeah.
It did not enter my mind.
Yeah.
I was going to go to Japan and teach English if all else failed. And I actually had that. That was plan B.
That's the fallback.
Yeah, and it was lined up. So I had to actually turn that down when I accepted the job to move out to the Valley. And once I got my hands on designing for the web, and it just started back then, and doing digital design for products, that set me on my way.
Do you still look back on your days studying painting as a great foundation for what you currently do?
Yeah, I do think that what I learned was not necessarily the technique of painting, even though I learned how to do that. It's been a while since I did, but what I learned to do was tap into this innate desire to make shit. And solve problems. And there are times when I think maybe I should have flipped it the other way in college. Maybe I should have studied design like you did, instead of going to art. But honestly, I was 16, 17, 18 years old. I didn't know the difference. And all I knew was I was drawing and I was painting. So that was the closest thing to what I knew as a 17, 18-year-old. But I don't regret doing that. And going to Carnegie Mellon was this great place to not only pursue the arts, but you got exposed to all this other stuff.
Couldn't avoid it.
You couldn't avoid it, exactly.
It's by osmosis you were getting it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you get your first big break? How did it happen?
Are you talking big break as in the first real job? Or
Well, first, what would you say your first big break was, and then how did you get it?
I'd say my first big break in my career was when I was able to get out of the productivity, enterprise management software side. Because I did that for the first 5 years of my career. That was foundational, I think, just for me to learn what it's like to be a UI designer, interaction designer. People weren't throwing around the term user experience back then.
Right.
And I learned kind of the mechanics of doing that. And the first big break was making that shift when I was working for Microsoft. I was working on the product area for SQL Server, right? Most people were like, what the hell is that? Exactly. And I was always this big gamer. Throughout high school, the only things I did were read, draw, and play video games. Sleep was like number 5. And to be able to pursue gaming as an actual job was this amazing thing and for some reason I was able to convince certain people at Microsoft when they were building their games group out that I was actually one of the right people to pull in there, and I started designing UI for games.
Wow.
So that was so I consider that as kind of the seed of the break that I got early on in my career. If you're talking about even earlier, what got me to IBM, because that I think is a fantastic break for someone who didn't even know what the hell they were going to go do. I was going to go illustrate books. I was doing catalog covers. I was gonna anything that would help me pay the bills, I was willing to do as a designer. A friend of mine at Carnegie Mellon, she came back from an interview, said, "Hey, I just came back from an interview with IBM," and she was in information science. She had a technical background. And she said that the hiring managers said that they were also looking for graphic designers.
Wow.
Why don't you go sign up and talk to them?
Yeah.
I never thought about it. It's like, huh.
Was this IBM in Texas?
No, there's IBM here in
Oh,
San
okay.
Jose. And this was on-campus interview back in Pittsburgh. And honestly, I never thought about that. I have no idea what it's like to even interview for that. But it gets me out of class.
Yeah, there you go.
If you remember, right?
Yeah, sure.
If you had an interview, you could
Free pass.
Free pass.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can do that.
I'll take it.
So you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
So when you look back at all these amazing positions you've held from IBM to Microsoft to Mercedes to now Netflix, how would you say each one, shaped your path, and what did you get from each one that kind of directed you all these years?
I've been trying to chase a couple of different things. One is a sense of, I guess, the ability to self-direct, like autonomy, right? I'm looking for a way to make sure that, the world doesn't dictate what I can do, I get to dictate what I do. So I've kind of been
destiny.
Exactly, right? So I've been pursuing that. And I'm a guy who's always had a 10-year plan, but that 10-year plan changes every 2 years.
Gotcha.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
But I've always had a thing that I'm trying to get to. And I've always stayed hungry, and I think being a first-generation immigrant and seeing my parents work so hard had a lot to do with it, right? Like, for example, my dad has an MBA. We came from the Philippines, and the only consistent job he was able to control for himself when he came to the U.S. was deliver the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he did that for 10 years, and that's what sent me and my siblings to school. I'm not going to complain about the kind of shit that I can do based on what he and my mom did raising a family coming here as immigrants. So that's been always in the back of my mind where I'm like, all right, there's no job that's below me.
Right.
But what will guarantee that I'm moving forward is that what am I learning? So part of my 10-year plan has always been this thing that I'm going to be doing for the next year, 2, 3 years. What am I going to learn from that that will actually open up options for me and maybe get me closer to that 10-year plan that I currently have? So I feel really lucky that it somehow has worked out. I don't know what my 10-year plan will be in a couple of years, but I feel like at least what I'm doing currently is moving me forward rather than keep making me stuck in any one particular place.
When you look at all the companies that you've been working at, what would you say some of the best practices were for innovation at some of these larger organizations, and what did you see that maybe didn't work so well?
The places that I believe have done a good job of enabling innovation are the ones that actually have made people feel like they're more willing to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
So
safety nets.
Yeah, or not just safety nets, but it's okay to take a flyer.
Right.
Right. It's okay to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to.
It's okay to fail.
Yeah, it's okay to fail just as long as you're learning
right.
from it, as opposed to, I've seen organizations that have their first step is to figure out how to reduce risk,
mm-hmm.
or their first step is how to make sure that if all things fail, that they know who to blame.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to take risks in those kinds of environments, and innovation requires that. You need to take a leap.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be right every single time. If you are, you're not taking big enough risks.
Right.
So I think organizations that understand that relationship between risk and innovation are
mm-hmm.
the ones that tend to do a better job.
And then encourage it.
Yeah, exactly.
Foster a culture of innovation.
Yeah.
How do you measure the success of a design initiative?
Great question.
I'm sure it varied at different organizations.
Yeah, it is.
To
So
a large degree.
Exactly. If you're working at, so speaking for Netflix, for example, we are very metrics driven and
mm-hmm.
metrics oriented.
Subscribers.
We call the two big ones that we tend to talk about are we call streaming. How much
mm-hmm.
are people streaming
and
watching?
And hours.
Yep. And how much are we retaining
mm-hmm.
customers?
Month to month.
So you can say that most of the work that we do can somehow be measured through some
mm-hmm.
kind of business metric, right? Because
mm-hmm.
we are designers.
Yep.
We're not artists. And for me, one of the differences between being a designer and an artist is, as a designer, you're trying to solve a problem. And generally, when you're working for businesses, you're trying to solve a very clear business problem
mm-hmm.
by addressing a consumer need.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, you tend to be making stuff for yourself.
Right.
You're trying to say something.
Right.
Or you're trying to question something.
Mm-hmm. Expressing yourself.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Fine. That's all fine and good, and I love that. But as a designer, I don't want you to know what I'm trying to express, right?
You don't count. It's for the end user.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So consumer success, user
mm-hmm.
success, right? All these different ways to I think, measure the success of a design.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to improve the usability of a system, you can measure that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to create something that, in our case here at Netflix, you believe that success means it will actually get people to watch more,
mm-hmm.
you can see that, right? You
Yeah.
will actually see that by doing this.
Since we did this happened.
Yeah, or we
Yeah.
do lots of A/B testing,
Mm-hmm.
and so that actually employs the scientific method to actually understand whether the thing we did is successful or
mm-hmm.
not, right?
And what factors led to the success
Yeah.
specifically? Where do you get inspiration personally?
Some of the stuff that you guys are doing
Cool.
are definitely one of those. I read a ton.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably, the thing that I fall back on the most is I try to read, and I try to read a wide variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires sometimes a Herculean effort to read more than just Facebook
Sure.
and Twitter and just whatever's online, like get away from that, but to actually read a damn book
Mm-hmm.
or two or four.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's my number one, and
Mm-hmm.
try to read a variety of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't just, I tend not to just go read up on one set of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then keeping an eye on stuff and actually trying to, just being curious about everything,
Mm-hmm.
try to keep an open mind about things, and try not to be, try not to take too many things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that I love a particular thing? Just
Yeah.
rewind, like, what is it about this that's awesome?
Dig a little deeper.
Yeah, like, why is this great? Why is that not so great?
Yeah.
And just being more curious about outside of your own bubble. So, for example, and I can't believe I'm going to admit to this, but I remember years and years ago when I was hearing about this series of books that was somehow getting noticed. I read Twilight. I read all of them, right? I'm the one who introduced Twilight to my wife because I read it. I was like, there's something here that people are reading, right? Now you can argue whether or not that was a good or bad judgment, but I would normally not have read that. I normally, that's not something that I would say is in my wheelhouse when I'm reading. But I try and do that. I'll watch some movies that.
So you have a great sense of curiosity. So you want to tap into what's causing this this popularity.
And I try hard not to be a fucking snob, right?
Nothing's below you.
Yeah, nothing's below me. Pop music is popular for a reason, right? Pop culture is popular for a reason. And I'll use Spotify and Pandora just to listen to what's popular, as opposed to go back to the same stuff that I keep on listening to. I don't want to be one of those old guys who are stuck in the 80s and 90s. I actually want to know what's going on now. It's like, okay, this Snapchat thing, don't want to be one of those people who don't even know how to use that and not understand why people are using it.
Yep.
So I think that kind of curiosity and just going outside of your boundary.
Yeah, staying aware of your environment. How do you inspire your team, especially when I assume that they're working on the same things over and over again, or similar challenges over time? How do you maintain a level of inspiration and excitement?
That's a hard thing, right? Because people are different. So one of the things I try to do, I've been trying to do it in different places where I've managed, is try to understand what every individual needs, because what inspires them is different.
Different motivating factors.
Yeah, what motivates them, and somehow find a way to connect to that, and find a way to connect what it is that motivates them to their job, right? If you can somehow make that connection, it's a lot easier. And it could be very different things, right? Some people may be motivated by seeing their work come to life, right? So great. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've worked for a lot of companies where it has this very large footprint.
Yep.
You've got a large stage on which to show your work. So for people who are driven by that, fantastic, right? For people who are driven to learn more things, seek things out, great. There's an opportunity to go do that, because if we're trying to advance, we're trying to innovate, just keep up on things. How do you push us beyond our comfort zone? So doing that, right? And a Venn diagram that I try to use to illustrate what I'm trying to do to have that happen in teams is, can you find this overlap between what people are passionate about, what they're good at, because they're not always the same thing, and where the business need is. If you can somehow find
that's
that
the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot, right? And it may be different for every single person, but if you can do that, that's great. So go through that exercise, and if you're not in that sweet spot, how can you, right? And if you're in a business, well, you're the one who defines, or who has the responsibility to understand what's that business circle. And if someone's space isn't in the overlap of the business, well, maybe they're not in the right place. And knowing that is actually also a very good thing.
Truly.
Right?
Yeah. What's the best piece of design you've ever seen?
So hard to say. The easy answer in the past 10 years is probably the iPhone, because it completely transformed everything that we're doing. And it's odd to say, 10 years ago people would not have said it would have changed everything, but really it did. I mean, smartphones have been around, but not in that way. Not in a way that made the experience, made the ease of use, made the industrial design and the interface just that seamless. So that's the easy answer. best piece of design. I love little things, little examples.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find. Here's the big thing. Like I love we've taken for granted in newer cars that if you put it in reverse, the rear view camera turns on without you having to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And as you turn the wheel, you can see which direction the car's supposed to go. I love how there are some cars where you do go into reverse. Not only do you see rear view, you see the 360.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, unless you thought about it for a second, it's like magically, how did they do that? There's no drone flying over my car, and how did they do that? The fact that you pop open a car door and the window just slides down just a little bit, right? And it's those little details that I think really, really matter, right? The texture of the material that you're touching. I should get my Geek Squad badge this weekend because I set up this new Wi-Fi system and my new Nest outdoor camera, all within a couple hours.
Wow.
And I thought that I've tried the Wi-Fi cameras before. I've tried them intermittently over the past 10 years, even longer when I was raising puppies 15 years ago. And they all suck. And I've been setting up the Nest cam, and I've been setting up the Nest outdoor cam, and there's a point where it's like, holy shit, that worked. It wasn't actually that painful. And so it's those things that I love. It's those things that I notice.
Cool. So in the time you've been at Netflix, how have things evolved here? How have things changed?
Let's see. So I joined a little over a year and a half ago, and I think globally we had, is it 60 million, almost 60 million members? We're now at like 85-ish million subscribers around the world. This January we did this big thing where we went completely global. We were in 60 countries before, and then we turned it on in another 130 countries, so we're now live in 190 countries.
Amazing.
Which is crazy. Last year we introduced a brand new version of the website, so if you've been using Netflix on the web for a while, you may have seen middle of last year.
Were you a big part of that look?
Yes, yeah, so I helped the team finish shipping that thing, right? I can't take credit for where it started, so that was about a year and a half long process. I was a year for the last 6 months of that. So kind of, I gracefully found ways to get out of the way, as well as kind of nudge it here and there. So that was really good to see. And so those are just within the areas that I've had direct exposure to. There's so many things going on here that I'm not quite aware of, but I've definitely also loved just leaning back and seeing the great new things coming out. I don't know about you, but my wife and I binged through Stranger Things that first weekend.
Is that your favorite? What would you say your favorite Netflix show has been?
Right now,
it's
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, but Narcos has been fantastic. We just finished season 2 of that.
Do you binge on these things like everybody else, or?
We slow binge to it, like maybe 2-3 episodes at a time. I've been trying to be more disciplined about not going till 3 in the morning and then regretting it for the next day. I find that I don't recover nearly as well from that kind of lack of sleep. Yeah, exactly. It happens, right?
Yeah. Cool. So is there anything currently that you can talk about that you're really excited as far as Netflix is concerned, initiatives or current things that you're leading?
Well, so currently I lead what we call the TV design team. So if you use Netflix on a smart TV, game console, or any kind of media device that you stick into your TV, my team is responsible for designing that. And we've been trying to make sure that experience really is reflective of what TV should be. Right? We're so used to seeing traditional TV be, you turn it on and you're watching TV. Still the case with cable. You turn it on, you got hundreds and hundreds of channels, and it's really up to you to figure out how you're supposed to find the good stuff, right? It's generally a shitty experience across the board. So we're constantly trying to find the best way for us to get what works with TV, because there's some amazing things about what works well with TV, right? It's been decades. We grew up with this stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe what's changed is more channels. You know, you move from broadcast to cable TV, DVRs, and the ability to actually personalize, like all those things. Great. Take the best of those things and see, can we create a product experience that takes the best of the new stuff and gets rid of all that's wrong with the old stuff. So broadly speaking, what is the best TV experience that you can have that is what it should be for internet TV, where it can be super personalized. You turn it on and it's your TV shows. It's the things that you really want to watch right now versus you turn mine on and it's really tailored for me and for whoever's sitting in my living room.
Cool. So my bonus question is there a story behind Wild Chicken? That's your Twitter handle, right?
Yes, it's my Twitter handle. It's
your
my blog. It's my Xbox Live gamer tag. I think back in the 7th grade, I had a writing assignment, so my first year in the U.S. or something, and there was a writing assignment, somehow talking about the etymology of your last name.
Okay.
And so I'm from the Philippines, and one of the ways that you can translate a meaning from my last name is Ma as a prefix for many, and Labuyo as a kind of wild chicken.
Gotcha.
Right?
You
so you can say it's many wild chickens. The romantic story being that my ancestors, before the Spanish turned the Philippines into a colony, was small, feisty people that wouldn't back down because these chickens were, didn't act like chickens. They were belligerent, right? And so, the romantic story is my ancestors were belligerent small people.
Gotcha.
I think it's more like my ancestors were chicken farmers. So somewhere in between is probably the truth. I remembered writing this. It was after I graduated from college when I started then playing more games, because I actually gave up gaming when I was in college because there's no way I could have
balanced it all out.
No way. But when I started gaming again, I started playing online, and then you need to find different handles. And the thing that I remembered was the story from 7th grade, and then I started just using it as a handle, and it stuck.
Now you can't shake it.
And I embraced it.
Yeah.
For years, there were people I would play with online who didn't know my real name, and even in person, they'd call me Wild Chicken.
Wow.
So it's just kind of become this thing, but it's not a random handle.
No, it's great. So lastly is the Perception Fave 5. What's your favorite book? Since you're an avid reader.
God.
Besides Twilight, of course.
Besides Twilight, so number 2 under Twilight. I'd say my favorite book is like Count of Monte Cristo.
Favorite?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I reread that book about once every 5 years.
Favorite color?
Yellow orange.
Favorite movie?
Ooh. Shawshank Redemption.
Favorite food?
I will eat most anything at least once, as long as it's good, but apple pie a la mode would be...
With ice cream?
Yes,
Nice.
yes.
And do you have a favorite saying or quote?
Not anymore. I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Cool. Well, where can people find you online besides Wild Chicken and your blog? Do you want to plug for that?
Yeah, that'd be great. So people can find me online at i4design.com. So letter I, number 4, design.com, where I try to blog just really as an exercise to write.
It's a great blog. I read it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I am on Twitter. I don't tweet as much, but that's at Wild Chicken. So those are the 2 easy places to find me online.
Cool. Well, Paolo, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out today.
My pleasure.